held on the 4th of June 2025. I'm just going to check if we have Councillor Allison. We don't seem to have Councillor Allison. We have Councillor Anderson, Councillor Barker, Councillor Chalmers, Councillor Clark. I'll check if we get Councillor Cooper. We don't have Councillor Cooper. I'll check if we get Councillor Dewar. Yes, we have Councillor Dewar. We have Councillor Equay. I'll check if we get Councillor Fagan. We don't have Councillor Fagan. We have Councillor Gowland. We have apologies from Councillor Hamilton. I'll check if we've got Councillor Keat. No, we don't have Councillor Keat. I'll check if we've got Councillor Lambie. We don't have Councillor Lambie. We have Councillor Lockhart. We have apologies from Councillor Loudon. We have Councillor Marsh, Councillor Leslie MacDonald, Councillor McDougall. We have apologies from Councillor Nugent. We have Councillor Ray, Councillor Razak, Councillor Robb. I'll check if we've got Councillor Ross. Yes, we have Councillor Ross. We have Councillor Scott, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Toner, Councillor Walker, Councillor Williams, and we have a number of officers present. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the declaration of interests. Do we have any declarations of interest? I don't think we do. Okay, thank you. So we move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Those are on pages 3 to 8 of the pack. So I'll move those minutes as a correct record.
Happy to second them.
Any questions, comments on those? Are we all agreed? Yes, thank you. And on now to the third item on the agenda, which is a presentation from the Lanarkshire Climate Action Hub. And so I will invite Alison Limbert, who is the Strategic Lead Officer, to deliver her presentation, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce the Lanarkshire Climate Action Hub to yourself. Can you move on, please? Thank you. So we were formed in December 2023. We're part of a network of community climate action hubs all across Scotland. There are 24 in existence. Lanarkshire is one of the largest ones, and so they vary in size from the likes of Lanarkshire down to smaller areas like Moray, Midlothian, West Dunbartonshire local authority areas. The Community Climate Action Hub programme is a Scottish Government-led initiative and funded. The aim of the programme is to support people and groups and communities to be able to take climate action. And so for Lanarkshire, our vision is to be the organisation with the role to build connections, bring people and groups together to drive climate action forward, and really accelerate change from the ground up, from grassroots level. Can we move on, please? So to give you a bit of background, the programme began in 22-23. The Community Climate Action Hub programme follows a previous Scottish Government initiative, which was the Climate Challenge programme. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that was where individual projects were funded. And so there wasn't necessarily a spread of support across Scotland. It was where the projects were identified. And so they moved to trying to have more parity across Scotland for people to be able to access support, and so moved to this regional climate hub model. And they began with two areas that piloted the programme. One was in the Highlands and Islands, and the other was in the North East, covering the local authority area of Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire. They were successful, which then enabled them to secure a commitment for 3 years' worth of funding to roll it out across the country. And so 23-24 was the first year of the programme. The Lanarkshire Hub was established in December of that year, and there had to be one organisation who hosted the Climate Action Hub. In Lanarkshire, that's the Rural Development Trust. That's an existing charitable organisation based in Douglas Water and Clydesdale. And with that small window of time for 23-24, we waited until we'd secured the full year of funding in 24-25 before we recruited staff. And so they began in May. We had quite a rapid programme where we launched our small grants programme in June, and in September we ran the first Lanarkshire Climate Action Festival. Now we're in our third year of delivery, and I'll give you a wee bit more information further on about the types of stuff that we're doing this year. Thank you. So just to set the scene, we like to think of climate change not as one single issue, it's a broad topic. And so if we break down that broad topic into sub-areas, we can begin to explore what are both the climate impacts and what are some of the climate action that we can take for those sub-areas. So for example, with energy, how we heat our buildings and how we heat our homes. If we're using sources of fuel like oil and gas, that's creating a carbon impact. And the climate action can be looking at changing to more renewable sources of energy and also reducing our energy usage by making places more energy efficient. Another big carbon emitter is travel. By travelling and using vehicles that are consuming oil and gas, we're creating carbon impacts. And so the climate action can look at things like alternative forms of travel, active travel, community transport, or perhaps reducing those single-use car journeys and looking at more shared forms of transport. Waste is another area where there is climate impacts, and that's caused by the likes of waste such as paper and food not being segregated and going to landfill. So with climate action around waste, we're looking at ways that we can encourage people to make best use of recycling facilities or be reducing their consumption in the first place so there's less waste being produced. Choices around food also impact on climate, so red meat consumption has quite a high carbon impact, but also if we think about where food originates from and the number of miles in which that food has travelled before you're consuming it. So beginning to understand that and thinking about alternative choices, such as locally grown, seasonal produce, can reduce carbon impacts around food. And lastly, green spaces. We have natural resources like trees and peatland that can help with the absorption of carbon. But when those resources are either damaged or they're cut down, we're losing that valuable resource. So climate action around green spaces is about ensuring that we're making the most of our natural resources. Move on. And so we set to set up the hub in replicating that model of those different climate impacts. We're here to support communities, and communities are best placed with understanding about who the local people are, what the issues are, what the priorities are. So we didn't want to replicate that. We've sought to recruit people that can add value. So we've recruited development officers with specialist skills in those areas. And also we have a comms team as well that can help with the storytelling and amplifying the understanding of people about what climate is and what action that they can take. Can we move on? With all Scottish Government programmes, we have a list of outcomes that they're seeking to get from that investment. And so it begins with community level action across Scotland. We'll be able to contribute to building Scotland's resilience, reducing greenhouse gases. They're looking for the programme to enable communities to help shape policies, and that's policies around adaptation and mitigation of climate change. They want to ensure that climate change action is both equitable and inclusive. Hubs are designed to bring people and organisations together, and that's enabling to strengthen collective voice and take action towards a shared vision, and also having the ability for local innovations to be scaled up and replicated elsewhere. We can move on, please. So what does that look like in real life? And I'm going to share some examples of what's happened in Lanarkshire. So while we're a national programme, we've got the ability to shape what the local priorities are, and that's based on the communities around Lanarkshire, their priorities and their needs. So one way that we have sought to raise awareness and understanding about what climate action in your local community looks like is through putting on a festival. So we hosted the first Lanarkshire Climate Action Festival in September last year. It's an opportunity for community groups to showcase the fantastic work that they're already doing. And also it brings the benefits to them that they can raise their profile and hopefully recruit new volunteers. So the first festival, it took place a fortnight in September, and there was 66 events, over 2,500 attendees, and it involved 38 organisations across Lanarkshire, organisations ranging from agencies, community groups and businesses. Thank you. Another thing we do is we provide funding and support. If you can move on, please. Last year we ran 2 small grants programmes, and I will emphasise the small element of that. So one grant was an event grant of up to £500, where community groups were supported to put on an event at the Climate Festival. And the second one was a seed grant programme, where they had the ability to apply for up to £1,000, and that was for a project to host a climate conversation or take climate action. So £1,000, sorry if we go back a wee bit, please, doesn't necessarily enable that much to happen. So we allowed groups to use it as match funding. So that means if they had secured funding from another source, they could apply to our programme for that £1,000 to enable a little bit more of that project to happen. And an example of that is here in Cambuslang with Universal Connections. So they had already secured the funding to build a bike library. So they had the money to purchase the bikes. They'd already secured the resource, the labour, so people who were going to support the communities and been able to get confident in cycling and how to use a bike. But the missing piece of that puzzle was those cycle leaders had to have accredited first aid training, and they had to be equipped with first aid kits. So that's what the Seed Grant enabled them to do, was to kind of complete what all the necessary elements of that project was. And we move on. Another one, this is Morfit Gentle Movement project. They're in Hamilton. Their project was around that climate conversation. So they wanted to run a series of information sessions for their users and follow that up with some practical activities. So those information sessions ranged in topics like energy, growing your own food, planting for the environment, benefits of upcycling and litter picking. And you can see some pictures there where they built some bird feeders and were out litter picking while dressed in a novelty costume. In East Kilbride, the Community Trust applied to be able to install some outdoor libraries and a resource box within Kay Woodlands that could enable people to borrow resources like magnifying glasses, ID kits, and so they could explore the nature that was in the woodland. We loved the idea, but in their project proposal, they were asking to buy the physical libraries from Amazon. And we said, I think there's maybe some local suppliers that could perhaps give you a better value product. So we connected them up with East Kilbride Men's Shed. And as you can see from the picture, they've got a bespoke product which is probably made with better value materials. And so those libraries are available to go and visit now. The last one I've got is ISKCON Scotland in Lesmahago. They've been around for a few years now, running a community garden and eco-farm. So they recognised that they could do with a little bit more investment, which would allow them to put in some more garden frames and improve the fencing. And that would help with both the safety and the productivity of their eco-farming garden. And their overall aim is to build community climate resilience against climate change. Move on. Another thing we do is we help communities to understand about climate change, but in a way that relates and accessible to them. So if we move on, one example that we've done that, it was through working with young people at Calderglen High School in East Kilbride. We were asked to attend their Learning for Sustainability Day. So this was working with all students in S3, not necessarily the ones who are super keen and that are on the Eco Committee. And we had a 50-minute session in which to engage them. So we started with a game of climate action bingo. That's where they can explore things that they can do as an individual. We built them a map and took them on a tour of East Kilbride, showcasing different organisations that provide support to climate action. So that could range from Healthy and Active, Waste Not, Want Not, Universal Connections East Kilbride, through to like a Facebook group, East Kilbride Community Litter Pickers and Friends of Langlands Moss. So really just opening their eyes to what's there locally already. And you notice none of those organisations have climate in their title. So it's not perhaps particularly obvious to a young person. And then lastly, to really embed that understanding of what climate impacts and climate actions means for them. We had written them a story, so the day in the life of an S3 pupil at Calderglen High School. And that began from when they first woke up and they heard the news where it was talking about the storms that had brought down the power lines, through to going into breakfast and being told, don't take too long in that shower because energy costs a fortune. Through to realising when they were getting dressed that their school trousers were getting too short, but they were worried about asking their parents for a replacement pair when it was so early in the school term. So that's starting to sow the seeds of maybe where could we go and get some support? Through to travelling to school and recognising that it would be quicker to take a bike. And they had one in the garage, but it needed repairing and they didn't really know how to do that. And there were so many cars going past. And there's so many roundabouts in East Kilbride, so they might not feel particularly safe in taking their bike and getting to school, learning about peatlands, and suddenly that light bulb moment thinking, that's why it was so important for the Friends of Langlands Moss to protect that area. And that's why it's peat-free compost that's offered for sale in B&Q, for example. Through to getting their lunch and thinking that I've got too much on my plate, but then next to me, they're not eating all of theirs. So they're starting to realise there's maybe things where food has been wasted unnecessarily. So then we tasked them with writing the story of the same pupil, but set in 2045, and taking that same day in the life and telling us what it will look like then, and what are the issues that are affecting young people then. If we could move on. Another example is we were working with the Heart of Africa charity. So they support ethnic communities in New Scots. If anybody knows Mr. T, who quite often works out of Lark Hall, he's a very lively character and it's all about food and it's all about chat. You're smiling, you've met him. So we said, let's have a community lunch. It's straight up your street. So quite an engaging way where people were able to find out information about climate. And that started from when they arrived and they were given a menu card. And as well as detailing what the food was, each of them had maybe a little bit of advice or a little swap that somebody could take around those items to take climate action, through to having quite a lively climate quiz, so multiple choice, and the types of questions being, you've just had a takeaway coffee from McDonald's, can you put the cup in your recycling bin afterwards? And so people are starting to find out a little bit more information, but in a way that's quite accessible and quite engaging. We can move on. South Lanarkshire Council's Community Payback team asked us to come and do a presentation for their service users. And they're brief, and we do respond to what it is that people want. They know their audience better. They said that we want some really practical tips around saving money on energy. But we think that's what our service users would benefit from, that information. So with them, we had another quiz. We like quizzes. But this was more about tips on how you could reduce your energy usage, and then quantified it in terms of a cost to really put it into a perspective of why you should bother to do this and what you would benefit from. And lastly, another group is young people. We were invited to a few community events last year. So we've created resources from colouring sheets, which is giving kids the opportunity to learn about seasonal produce, through to challenges around how to reduce food waste and use up your leftovers. We help groups to bring ideas to life. And that's really about how we can best support communities. If you move on. One particular one we've done this year is we were contacted by two growing projects. So one is Grow 73 in Rutherglen, another one is Lark Hall Community Growers. They were really interested to understand how, because these projects are off-grid at the moment, so they have no access access to power or energy. And they recognise that by having access to that, it could help them with their growing, so they could produce more. They could have, the yield would increase. And it would also improve the welfare of their volunteers, having access to heat and light, the ability to charge power tools, etc. So we knew of organic growers in Bothwell, had solar panels, so we arranged a learning exchange visit for those groups to go along, where there's Sheena at Bothwell who's showing them what they're generating from the panels, and what they have is they have kind of shipping container style structures and an overhang that connects them. That gives them a maximum roof area in order to mount solar panels. So then we kind of posed the question, what would you do differently? Because hers were installed several years ago. And she said, I would have a battery. So it's all very well when the weather's good. It isn't that often in Scotland where you can generate the power from the solar panels, but that's not all year round. A battery would enable that power could be stored when the weather is not so good. It can then be drawn on to be used. So we worked with the two groups. We funded technical feasibility studies to understand what would they be needing in their individual sites around solar panels and battery storage. And then we prepared a funding application with them to try and seek funding from that. I don't have a happy ending just yet. We were unsuccessful with that funding application, but we've got the information that we can then use for future ones. So hopefully we'll get there eventually. Another idea which we've helped to bring to life is a seed savers network. So this is community growing groups quite often might at the end of the growing season save the seeds, for example, from like coriander or tomatoes and plant them again the next year. The reason they do that is then that they've got a particular seed that's suited to that specific growing conditions. So that would be the growing conditions of Rutherglen or Larkhall. And so you're more likely to get a more successful growth the next year and a higher yield. So we wanted to extend that more broadly and create the kind of infrastructure so more people can start to be doing seed saving. But we focused it on produce. So we've distributed through 3 community groups over 700 packets of open pollinated, and that's good quality seed. There specifically, we've got tomatoes, peas, we've got beans. And then we've also equipped people with the knowledge of how they can save their seeds at the end of the year. And that's through, we've got printed resources, we've got books, we've got a website, and then we hosted workshops. So you've got over 250 people came along to either at their local library or with the community growing groups where they were equipped with the knowledge. The idea being that in time that we're starting to build a bit of a facility that can help towards food security in Lanarkshire. We do know that weather conditions aren't going to necessarily be favourable, so that the more that we can build locally grown produce, the more we can make our communities more resilient to those potential impacts in the future. So for this year, examples of how we're supporting communities, we have a small grants programme. It's different than last year. We've taken the lessons of what we've learnt from the communities. So if I start with the Taste and Grow grant, that's designed to build partnerships between primary schools, nursery-aged nurseries and community growing projects. We do recognise that quite often investments made into schools where they can establish growing projects, but often that isn't sustained when that keen teacher who maybe put the application together initially moves on to another job. So by partnering them with a community growing project, they've then got that long-term support and the growing can continue, not necessarily relying on one individual. So at the moment we have 3 projects that are running, one in East Kilbride where schools working with Universal Connections and Healthy and Active, and another one in Lesmahago where they're working with ISCAN Scotland. And we've just recently opened for applications for the second round where we're asking schools in the Lanark area to express an interest if they'd like to work with Lanark Development Trust. Climate Festival grant, that's enabling community groups to put on events at this year's festival, and that closed at the weekend, and delighted with the response of a huge amount of community groups have come forward to be part of that. Active travel, we've got back one. So, Youth and Resharing Grant. We want to ensure we've got diversity and we've got a broad range of people participating in climate action. And young people are very well placed to be the ambassadors to encourage their peers to change behaviour. So we'd offer in a grant for projects that work with young people, so aged 16 to 25. And we want the young people to come up with the ideas. How can they come up with a way of doing something that might be through shared access? So perhaps it's things that don't get used too often, musical instruments, camping equipment through Duke of Edinburgh projects, that type of thing, that people can access that kind of library of shared resources. Or perhaps it's using reusable items. We've got examples of where sports teams, for example, are fed up with the amount of litter of single-use bottles around the playing fields. And so they've bought reusable water bottles, and that's what the football teams use when they use their facilities. So maybe it's a project around reusable items. Or lastly, it could be repurposing unused items. You've got some great examples like Revolve and Recycle, which are second-hand clothing organisations, but really make it quite fashionable. Quite something that people necessarily see the value in, rather than thinking that you have to buy everything new. Climate change in your community grant, it's about being able to reach communities who are more impacted by climate. And that can be communities that work with ethnic minorities, New Scots, perhaps those who have disabilities, long-term illnesses, high SIMD areas, those in rural communities. These are all communities who are going to be more impacted by climate change. And we want to partner them up with a creative practitioner to have those interactive, engaging conversations about what climate impacts mean to them and what they're experiencing, and then begin to look at what climate action they could take. Sorry, move on. Another one is Active Travel Communities Grant. So this is for communities that don't have active travel at the moment but would like to. So we're trying to use a small amount of money, it's up to £1,000, but in a really efficient way. And so a community can apply in to say, we'd like to find out more about having active travel in our area. The funding will enable them to pay for the services of an established active travel provider. So for example, someone like Gear Up in Lanarkshire, who can come along with their fleet of bikes, or their mechanics who can give talks on bike maintenance or how to repurpose bikes that are no longer used, and host a community cycling day. At that community cycling day, the applicant organisation can be gathering all the insights. So what would you like to see in your area for active travel? What's there at the moment? What would you like to do? What are some of the barriers? And we tested this all out at Easter time. We ran a community cycling day event at the David Livingstone Centre in Blantyre. So we've got the templates of what the survey questions look like. And we've also designed how you can gather that information from children as well. And all that's doing is equipping the community group so that they can go and apply for more funding in the future. So, for example, to install a bike library, or to have some skills around building confidence. But they've got all the information that a funder would be looking for in terms of what's the demand, who's going to use it, how are you going to run it. So it's putting community groups on a pathway to be able to be taking climate action. And how they can resource it as well. And lastly, Climate Ready Places Grant. This is about working with place-based communities and exploring around a particular area. So that could be a village, it could be perhaps a park, that a number of groups that use those facilities, and mapping what are the climate impacts that they've seen on that particular area. They're best placed, they use it all the time. And then the second part of the grant allows them, once they've explored what those impacts are, to look at what are some climate actions that they could take to adapt towards that. So as well as having the conversation, they're equipped with some money to be able to take climate action to start addressing some of that. So they're the 6 grants that we're running this year. We could move on. We're repeating the Lanarkshire Climate Action Festival, and it's got its own dedicated website with tips on how to organise your event, promote it, and engage people to come along. And then I'll finish up by just saying, please, if you can help your communities to access our support, we're here with a resource. So maybe to find out the different types of ways it is for you to sign up to our newsletter, and then you hear about the different types of grants, events, facilities. Equally, another way to keep in touch is following us on social media, and there's the different platforms that we're on. Do encourage groups to get in touch with us. We want to have a conversation with them and understand about what their priorities are and what their issues are, so that it's not necessarily about them only applying for a grant, and that's the first contact that we have with them. I have got a team of development officers with a whole range of experience, so it's a resource we encourage communities to tap into and have that initial introductory conversation with us. Equally encouraging groups to host events at the Climate Action Festival, and also to participate with our small grants. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative, lots of good projects there. Do we have any questions? Councillor Thompson is first up.
Much here, just like to say a very well delivered speech here and very, very informative. So thank you. It's encouraging to see that things are happening not just in one, but in several parts of South Lanarkshire. I'd like to think with mindset, and to get the mindset of young people into nurseries and schools, primary and secondary, more publicity and more work there. The only negative is recently with America, for example, about them going back to fossil fuel and that, and some people have said to me, but it doesn't matter about what we're doing, what about these big countries? How would you advise me how to respond to that, please? Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I think it's about encouraging people to think about what's important to them, and to them it's probably their place and it's the people. So for young people, you want to live in the best possible place. So what can we do now? What can you do? How can we protect your particular community? What's the type of action you can take so that your families and your friends have access to clean air, they've got access to warmer homes, and think about those kind of, I suppose, climate action that will directly lead to a better quality of life for them. Leadership will change in other countries and things will evolve, but we do know that we have to start taking action now. And so I think it would be more about just encouraging the focus to bring it into what we can do as individuals and what we can do in Lanarkshire and what we can do in Scotland, and think about the benefits that we would directly see ourselves.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I like the word you're using there, you. It's what you can do, and know but what other people are doing, but you can do. So thanks for that. Very encouraging. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for that comprehensive and detailed presentation. It's really good to see a lot of that engagement work ongoing, and that engagement that actually, works and is tailored to the specific groups that you're speaking to, rather than just putting something out into the ether. The engagement with minorities and areas most impacted by climate change, such as people in rural areas, and kind of showing those actual impacts of climate change, because sometimes people will, they'll see it on the news, they'll see it on social media or whatever, and it's not kind of real to them. They can't, it's hard, it can be sometimes hard to envisage that, but of course that engagement work is kind of helping to combat that and people to understand kind of what climate change is and the benefits and so on. I know we'll later in the agenda be able to talk about the Council's communications, but I've noticed in the language in that presentation and much of the discourse about climate change, it is centred around kind of that positive messaging and expressing the benefits of tackling climate change just economically, rather than the world's going to end if we don't act now. Of course, that's still a part of it, but has that been a conscious decision to move towards kind of that more positive messaging?
I think the positive messaging, and I think the accessibility, but also in building our engagement strategy for the Lanarkshire Climate Action Hub, we were quite unusual that we didn't talk about climate as one issue, but broke it down into sub-parts. So, because if we were to say that we only support community organisations that have climate in their title, there's 2 in South Lanarkshire and there isn't any in North Lanarkshire. So we have to make it relevant for people. I think that's the other key thing. What's going to inspire action? Something that I can see that I can do and is relatable as well. So I think that positivity and that relevance are the 2 key aspects about communication around climate. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Barker, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that very comprehensive report. And it is, the difficult job of addressing climate change from the bottom up, when, to be honest, governments at the top are failing us. And one of the, how do you explain to, younger people that what they're doing will make a difference despite what is happening in the rest of the world? Just to go back to your, initial slide, where transport is a big source of emissions. As far as I know, transport is Scotland's biggest source of emissions. Yeah. And it's getting worse. And although walking and cycling is always good, it does have to result eventually in reduced on-road road traffic. You also had another good bit of that slide, that when trees are chopped down, or in fact die, they release the carbon back into the atmosphere. And this shows the good point of biomass for heating. And occasionally we have the idea, oh, you burn it, it's producing emissions, which it is, but it's recycled emissions. So thanks very much. And I hope that all these, small projects, people will get to learn what we have to do for the future. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, don't think there's any other questions. So I think, can we all just thank Alison for the presentation and answering these questions? Thank you. Feel free to leave the meeting now, or you're welcome to stay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item, item number 4 on the agenda is the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan for 2024-2025, Quarter 4 Progress Report, and that's on pages 9 to 98. Can I invite Adam Wallace to speak to this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Quarter 4 Progress Report for 24-25. Section 3 of the report provides the background. The action plan for 24-25 was approved at this committee in August 2024. Progress on all objectives, actions and measures as of the end of Quarter 4 24-25 is set out in full in Appendix 1. Moving on to some detail in the report, Section 4.2 details progress against the performance measures in the report. Of these, there were 7 actions marked as green, 2 at amber, 1 at red, 2 reportable at a later stage, and 5 were contextual. The one measure marked as red for 24-25 related to the percentage of household waste recycled, which remains below the target of 50%. Performance against this measure will continue to be monitored, and the work that Waste Services are undertaking to help move closer to the target is included in Appendix 1. The 2 amber actions reported in 24-25 relate to the delayed opening of Cunninger Loop and the number of environmental volunteering days, which we've had difficulties gathering data for from partner organisations. 2 measures are reportable at a later stage, and the updates for those will be provided at Q2 25-26. Section 4.4 details progress against improvement actions, of which there are 93 in total. 28 of these marked as blue, meaning they're complete. 59 marked as green, 4 at amber, 1 red, and again 1 reportable at a later stage. The 1 measure marked as red at Q4 relates to the development of the business case for Demonstrator Internet of Things projects, which is on hold to better align with the IT services digital transformation timeline. The 4 amber actions with minor slippage. These actions categorisation relates to the revision of timescales for delivery of associated plans, guides and strategies. Some key highlights are outlined at section 4.6. And just to pick a few of these out, a new integrated impact assessment process has been developed and implemented in 2024, incorporating a sustainability impact assessment section. The Youth Forum have been successful in delivering the 3rd South Lanarkshire Council Conference of Schools event. Path clearance and surfacing works have been completed on sections of the National Cycle Network Route 75. The Council's Climate Emergency Fund was fully allocated in 24-25. 58 schools across South Lanarkshire now hold Green Flag Awards, which is an increase of 13 schools on the previous year. In total, 1,669 employees completed the Climate Change Learn Online modules, which represents an 18% increase compared with the previous year. The Council's Scope 1 carbon emissions for 23-24 achieved a reduction of 7.87 compared to the previous year. And one final point is around external funding. We've been successful in securing 1.669 million in external funding, which has been put towards sustainability and climate-related projects. Sections 5 through 9 represent all the standard implications for the Council. In particular, at Section 7, the climate change, sustainability and environmental implications are noted. The strategy and this action plan that we're reporting on enable the Council to meet its national and international obligations, including under the Climate Change Scotland Act and towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So just to refer back to the recommendations of this report, the committee is asked to approve the recommendation that the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan Q4 Progress Report for 24-25 be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Do we have questions on this? I see Councillor Anderson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Page 62, improving the resilience of the road network through routine maintenance. There's a bit at the bottom here, done some trials on the Rhino Felt. Now, this isn't a new material. This has been on the go for many years. As a matter of fact, airports use it on the runways. I'm just wondering how long do we need to wait for the results of these trials? And were they carried out just on roads or on pavements? Because this can be used on pavements. And was it roads that was just recently resurfaced, or was it roads that had already been done? And I'm just wondering whether we're taking notice of other people who have used it, maybe been using it for years, to see if it's a viable proposition. Because I know it's a specialist machine that actually does it on the roads. You need a specialist computerised truck that delivers it, and maybe something smaller for pavements. I'm just wondering how far down the road we are on that. Thanks.
Colin Park, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Anderson, for the usual informed questions. So thank you for that. So we did this on Palace Grounds Road last summer. So if anybody wants to have a look at it, then you can head on down. So that road was probably sitting in kind of, some parts of it were red, but some of them were amber. So we're obviously directing most of our investment monies towards the red roads, i.e. those that are needing attention. We are starting to use other techniques, preventative maintenance, which is what this one is. You're right, Councillor Anderson, other councils do use it. but there's lots of products out there, and we're just looking to trial it ourselves. We've not done it in footways, we've only done it in this one route. So it's basically from the bottom of bottom of Muir Street, Palace Ground Road, all the way up to Motherwell Road. At this moment in time, it's doing what it's meant to do. It's sealed the road, stabilised the road network. We expect probably that section of road to have extended maintenance for about 3 to 5 years. We are looking at other products. I had a meeting yesterday with a similar supplier, and also through the Climate Emergency Fund that was approved exec committee last week as well. We're looking at other kind of techniques in terms of road construction and road maintenance. So it has been used. It's proven elsewhere, but we haven't used it. So we're giving it a go to see what we think in terms of the conditions, as a colleague said up earlier on there. Different road conditions, different weather conditions, different traffic conditions are all across the UK. What's appropriate down in the south of England is not appropriate for the north of Scotland. So we're just doing these trials to better understand how beneficial it is. And given I've just told you where it is, I'm sure you will be telling me how good it is in the coming months and years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next question is Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to Adam for the report, and to Colin for the answer to Councillor Anderson's question there. I've got 2 questions. I'll ask them just now, but I can come back on any of them if needed. So first of all, when it talks about the volunteering days on page 20, it mentions the difficulty in getting data back from these organisations. I suppose my question would be, what more can we do to encourage that engagement? Of course, it's not something they are required to do and required to supply to, so there might be a limited amount we can do, but of course the council does have a role more generally in helping these voluntary organisations in recruitment, retention and recognition of volunteers. So it does relate to kind of general volunteering days and volunteering organisations. A second question would be around, it talks about it on page 41, the Climate Youth Forum and their Conference of Schools event. It's very good to see that it appears to have been a great success this year once again, so absolutely well done to the Youth Forum and their leadership on that. My question on that would be, in terms of moving forward, something which I've asked before at Climate Change, how can we ensure that this is something which is taken forward into schools and that it's not just kind of an annual event once a year? I know there's other work that goes on in terms of sustainability in schools and working with school staff and teachers, but how can we ensure an event like this isn't just a fantastic annual event? How can we ensure that work continues on throughout the year? Will there be reports coming forward on the work that's taken from that? Thank you.
Kevin Carr, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Clark. You're absolutely right in terms of environmental volunteering days. The reporting of the numbers isn't something that we can enforce because it's entirely voluntary. But we're now seeing a bit of a pattern over the last 2 years where we're really not getting any returns from the numbers. It's quite a big drop. So we're looking at the way that we are asking for groups to report to see if it's too onerous. And we're also seeing if we can maybe do something before any of the volunteering days are carried out, if there's a way even capturing estimates before the days are done to try and get the figures up, because we're pretty sure there's lots more volunteering going out there that we're just not able to capture at the moment. So that's something that we're working on at the moment to make sure that we're getting back to the figures that we were in previous years.
David Tinchlewood, please.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Yes, as you say, the journey started in November with the Learning for Sustainability Conference, which again involved our own teaching staff across all sectors, and then the Youth Forum presenting the course event. We are planning a showcase event next year for all the primary schools to come and show their good work so that we can share best practice and have a more collaborative approach across all primary schools. And Gillian Riley, who's an excellent officer who leads on this for us within education, certainly is in touch with all schools throughout the year to make sure that we're embedding sustainability in all the climate action we can within all establishments. Our probably challenge for next year is probably going to be early years, because we don't quite link into them quite as much as we probably should at this time. That's a commitment we're going to have moving forward into the next academic year.
Okay, next question. Councillor Barker, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that. A very lengthy report to go through, and I've just picked out the main points of it. My usual kind of comment is on emissions from road traffic. Way back in year 2000, we had big ideas on road traffic reduction. Traffic has just increased and increased, and I really don't see what this council can do about it. It does depend on, well, I think rather ineffectual net zero policies from higher government. What is happening at the moment is bus services being reduced, supported bus services being reduced, and I believe commercial bus services being reduced, which is not good. But then again, having relatively empty buses running is maybe not, a good thing for climate emissions. So that's just my usual rhetorical question. On page 25, we come back to this big red blotch on our achievements, if you like. I'd always considered that South Lanarkshire was doing really well on recycling, even if some people still believe the black bin, it goes to landfill, which it doesn't. But then we have this thing put on us from, I believe, SEPA, but Kevin can update me, effectively on the foam in furniture, which the new rules make it very, very difficult. So for a while we were told that this waste had to go to landfill. I think there's a move now to for incineration, which is not a complete loss. But the problem seems to be that furniture, to disassemble it is very difficult and expensive. But perhaps Kevin could give us an update on that. Thanks.
Kevin Carr, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Barker. This is our general discussion around POPs and WUDs when you come to committee. So, yeah, you're right. Last year we brought a paper to committee about the pre-existing legislation that SEPA announced that they were going to enforce from last year. So we've had to make some pretty significant operational changes and accept some additional financial costs, because now we can't collect POPs, WUDs, upholstered materials in the same vehicle. It's separate vehicles, and they now can't be recycled, which they were before, because they'd be took apart and each of the components would be, for the most part, be recycled. So these now need to be sent to specialist energy from waste facilities. It's not even just any energy from waste facilities, it's particular energy from waste facilities. So last year, when you look at our tonnages, we had around 1,100 tonnes of POPs or WUDs materials that previously would have went for recycling that now can't. So as you can see from the overall figure, that's had quite a big impact. And we're kind of stuck with that for the foreseeable future until, SEPA determine that all of the, or their best estimates are that all of the POPs and WUDs materials are now out of the waste stream. So for the foreseeable future, we will be having to operate with those additional financial costs, additional operational costs, and also that slight reduction in our overall recycling rate.
Thank you.
Kirsten Robb, please.
Thanks. Do you mind if I do a follow-up to Ralph's question whilst we're on the WUDs? Am I right in thinking that WUDs can be reused, upholstery can be reused rather than incinerated as well? And just to ask, if that is the case, reuse and put into charity shops and so on, what are we doing to try and focus our comms on that?
Kevin Carr.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Robb. So it only becomes an issue when it comes into the waste stream. So that's when it's classed as a waste material. So one of the things, previous discussions around this and some of the comms is that, what we want to do is for the general public to avoid it coming into the waste stream. So trying to promote, the second-hand charity shops or some of the websites like Gumtree, for example, to sell or give away some of the furniture to avoid it coming into the waste stream, because then it would us avoid the additional cost of it. So, as you said, we've built some comms around that and we'll continue to try and enforce those messages.
That's good. I was just wondering in the report, in future reports, could we start to change the language? So this type of waste must be incinerated or reused, to emphasise that the waste hierarchy. Certainly on the comm side of things, I think we definitely can. I had a chat with Kirsty Maguire, and we can maybe look at the point of booking slots at civic community sites or booking bulky uplifts. What are we saying to try and actually make sure that comes out of the waste stream at an early stage on our website? The stuff on recycling reuse is at the bottom rather than at the top. So reuse needs to be reflected in all our comms and the waste hierarchy to make sure that we don't say dispose first, and at the bottom there's information on reuse. So it's just to try and flip that to reflect the waste hierarchy, and to ask that we also get a wee update on the reuse hub in East Kilbride as well, to see how we're getting on that. So just to ask that the comms reflect the waste hierarchy, from website to leaflets to everything we're doing to try and get these things out of the waste stream. Thanks.
Next, we have a question from Councillor Ross, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. My question, or at least a comment, is a follow-up on the previous two speakers. I don't think the Council itself has done itself any favours by reducing the number of items on an uplift from 20 to 10 and imposing a charge. I frequently travel around my ward, and over the past few weeks during this by-election, I've had a chance to visit many areas, and what I'm finding is that there's a huge proportion of sofas, chairs, mattresses, which people feel unable to be able to either recycle or, by the cost of living situation, afford to have these items uplifted. And I think it's a growing problem that we have, and I'm not sure how the Council are going to go about tackling this. Do we have any views on how we can possibly make this easier for people on the long run to get these items to our recycling plants? Thanks.
Kevin Carr, please.
Thanks, Councillor Ross. I suppose I'd probably refer just to the previous discussion, the question that Councillor Robbs raised, quite rightly raised, because we haven't been doing enough around the comms around inverting the hierarchy, if you like, to encourage reuse. And I think a lot of the mentality of the public is it's disposal first. So I think we need to pick that up, because there's lots of the material that you've highlighted there, like sofas, chairs, that could be reused. So for us, it's about trying to encourage and promote that first, that there will be charity shops who are happy to accept them and repurpose them. And there's also opportunities to resell many of these items, for a commercial point of view. So there's a limit to what we can do as a council in terms of the uplift of that. We recognise that there is a charge now, but we do accept them at our household waste recycling centres, and we'd encourage residents to use that. But again, I suppose from our point of view, it's about promoting the waste hierarchy much better than we're doing at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mars, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just sort of, again, following on from some of the comments of my colleagues. I'm very aware of our waste disposal sites, that having visited personally in the last few weeks, that some items that are being disposed of are, maybe not to people's tastes, but are very reusable. And I wonder whether there's anything we could be doing at our civic community sites for people to take away items that are very usable and could be reused rather than add to the tonnage of our waste.
Kevin Carr, please.
Thanks, Councillor Mars. Yeah, it's a good question, and part of the contract that we've got for with Biffa for the operation of the sites is to encourage reuse, and Biffa are hoping to engage with local third sector partners in the reuse area, but I think to date they've been struggling to actually engage effectively with local partners, but it's something that they're looking to do to encourage reuse and perhaps have a reuse base in one of the larger sites, so that's something they're actively working on at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Robb again, please.
Thank you. Moving away from waste this time, Kevin, I think we've done that one. Back to environmental volunteering. The report kind of acknowledged we've got less capacity in the ranger service now due to cuts in previous years. But and I think it was the executive the other week asked about the South Lanarkshire volunteering pledge, and to ask for an update on that and how we can bring that volunteering back up to target. We know it's happening elsewhere, but how can we encourage corporate volunteering from all the people in the council and the benefits that that can bring as well? So just to see if you'll tie in with that volunteering pledge update.
I think Alison Brown will come in.
Alison Brown, please.
Thank you and good morning. Yes, at Exec Committee we did advise that our team last year undertook some volunteering, which was both really good for the environment, but really good for sort of team bonding as well. So we're looking to extend that out across enterprise and sustainable development and the wider resource this year. And from that, we'll look at some lessons learned and how that can maybe be rolled out wider across the council.
Thank you. Oh, I had another one, if that's okay. Yeah. Final one, on the training on page 35. I know some of us have done some climate training before, and I understand there's a learning online one. I just wanted to share my learning of where it is. I had a wee look yesterday because I hadn't done the e-learning one before, and just to share my learning, because I'm not, maybe you're like me, just getting used to Fusion. When you click on the learning tile in Fusion, and you go to the bottom, there's a search tile, and it will bring up the 11 different climate courses. And I realise, I think some members were asking for some climate training, so I hope that helps. And also there is the biodiversity training, which we asked for in the nature emergency motion last year as well. So all available, and thanks to Adam for his help in showing me where it was. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I don't see anybody else looking to speak, so can we agree to note the report, please? Agreed. Okay, the next item is Climate Change and Sustainability Communications Approach and the new logo, and that is on pages 99 to 106. Can I invite Gemma Dodds to speak to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present to the committee a newly developed Sustainability and Climate Change logo designed to support the promotion of the Council's work in recognising and addressing the climate emergency and to encourage appropriate action by residents and stakeholders. I refer you to section 3 of the report, which provides background information relating to the importance of climate-related communications. Section 4 then outlines information on the Council's sustainable development and climate change communications approach for 25-26, which was presented to this committee in March 25. The report identified that the most effective communication strategy fosters a sense of connection, agency and hope. However, as outlined in section 4.3, research on climate behaviour change shows that 59% of children and young people feel very anxious or extremely worried about climate change. But the good news is that this feeling of disempowerment and climate anxiety can be decreased by capturing more stories of hope about sustainability and climate action. As such, the Council has identified with positive messaging, we can help residents focus on a solutions-orientated approach to tackling climate change. Drawing on these research findings and the Council's focus on empowering action and positive change, the Sustainable Development and Climate Change team, in partnership with Communications and Strategy, have undertaken a refresh of the Council's climate change branding. Section 5 outlines the full approach taken to update the logo, which has been developed to support the overarching narrative of shared action, community progress and achievable change. Initial consultation with the Climate Change Youth Forum provided valuable input, with forum members contributing ideas and suggestions regarding motifs and taglines. The outputs of this collaborative process with both Communications and Strategy and the Youth Forum are presented at Appendix 2. This shows the proposed new logo both in isolation and with examples of how it will be applied across council materials, including posters, banners, digital platforms and reports. The logo features leaves and a sapling which contain symbols representing core aspects of sustainability, social, economic and environmental elements, including housing, low carbon energy production and community involvement. The leaves suggest growth towards a more sustainable future, and by connecting the two leaves, the importance of working together is depicted. The logo also makes reference to the local environment through aspects such as wind turbines, which are recognisable in the South Lanarkshire area. The design is accompanied by the tagline, "Working together for a better future." This tagline reinforces the principle that achieving climate and sustainability objectives requires collective action. The green text colour symbolises hope, positive change and a commitment to creating a sustainable future. As mentioned in Section 4, with positive messaging, South Lanarkshire Council can help residents focus on a solutions-orientated approach to tackling climate change. The logo has been designed to reflect the Council's priorities for climate change and sustainability communications through 25-26, promoting hopeful realism. With this, I refer you back to Section 2 of the report and ask that the new climate change and sustainability logo, as attached to Appendix 2, be approved. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I see we have a question from Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to Gemma for that report. I would like to welcome this and mainly the work that's gone into it. It's good to see that the logo and the strategy is backed up by research and engagement. It's not just a few people deciding what looks good. It's based on what actually works, and there's evidence to support that. Really pleased to see kind of the engagement with the youth forum and the say that they've had in it. And as I've mentioned, generally the work that's gone into that, I think the new logo certainly meets those themes. I suppose my question would be, obviously we are moving, as I mentioned earlier, moving towards that kind of more positive messaging, as has been said in the report, and that does line up with the political discourse as well, around those benefits of climate change rather than just the world's about to end. Of course, that sort of urgency of it still does need to be expressed within that. So I suppose my question would be, of course, with moving towards that positive messaging, are we still going to be expressing the urgency of the situation within that at appropriate points, because it is still a climate emergency? Thank you.
Adam Wallace, please.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. Yeah, I suppose the feedback on the new logo is very welcome, and although, like you said, we are moving towards more positive messaging, it certainly doesn't mean that we'll be taking our foot off the gas in terms of the urgency of the problem. That will be underlined in all of the reporting that we do, and we have, and next to committee we'll be bringing a paper on the response to the Scottish Government's climate change statutory duties guidance, which provides some really helpful feedback on how to, or provides some really helpful guidance on how we can underline the urgency of the problem and how we can continue to kind of drive change as quickly and as effectively as we can. So you'll be able to find out more about that in the next paper as well.
Okay, I don't see anyone else wanting to speak. So can we go back to the recommendation, and can we agree to the new climate change and sustainability logo and its use? Are we all agreed? Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 6, the full-term report on the Climate Emergency Fund 2021 to 2025, and that is on pages 107 to 128. Can I invite Catherine McCafferty to speak to this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update members on the South Lanarkshire Council Climate Emergency Fund and the progress of the projects that have been funded so far. Section 3 of the report provides the background to the fund. In 2021-22, £2 million from the revenue budget was allocated for a South Lanarkshire Council Climate Emergency Fund to be committed over a 4-year period. A report to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee on the 28th of April 2021 informed members of the areas to which the Climate Emergency Fund would be directed. A further report to this committee on the 3rd of November 2021 informed members of plans to formally launch the Climate Emergency Fund Grant Community Scheme. Section 4 of the covering report covers the scope and range of the fund. The Climate Emergency Fund was split into 5 key areas: staffing, development fund, match fund, projects and pilots, and the community grant fund. We also had 6 key themes: natural environment, built environment, active travel and transport, waste and recycling, sustainable communities, and the green economy. Section 4.6 of the report provides the financial details of the fund, and the table provides the yearly spend for each area. Section 5 covers the staff employed by the fund. There was a Sustainable Development Officer for funding, Sustainable Communities Engagement Officer, a Built Environment Team Leader, and 2 Built Environment Strategy Officers. This section also covers the key tasks carried out by the officers. Section 5.7 provides details on the PhD project, which is being carried out alongside Glasgow Caledonian University, and provides an update on the PhD research project. Section 6 of the report then details that a total of 28 internal climate change projects have been funded, including a mix of pilot studies, projects and feasibilities. A full list of the projects that have been funded can be found in Appendix 1. Section 7 of the report provides an update on the Climate Emergency Community Grant Scheme. In total, 118 grants have been awarded through the scheme, and details of all these projects can be found at Appendixes 2 to 5. Section 8 of the report provides the next steps, including that a specific project's outcome paper will be provided to the next committee in September. All the standard implications are noted in sections 9 to 13, including the significant benefits of the fund for funding essential feasibility studies, and that the Climate Fund has helped the Council contribute to national climate targets and has also had an impact on climate change action throughout the Council and for the wider South Lanarkshire community. So if I can return you to the recommendations of the report, and that is that the position in respect of the implementation of the Climate Emergency Fund is noted, and that a further report will be presented to the committee in September, providing further outputs and outcomes for the projects funded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Have we got any questions or comments? Councillor Ross, please.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I would like to welcome this report. As you will probably aware, the Climate Emergency Fund was set up under the last SNP administration, and from the report it seems to have been proved very beneficial. I was particularly interested to see that 28 internal projects were allocated and a further 118 grants allocated, and I was really surprised to see that we also had an officer-led application which secured 1.2 million from the public sector. When you go on to look at the list of projects approved in Appendix 1, I think that this emergency fund has more than validated itself, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has been involved in bringing this forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't see any other questions or comments, so could we note that report, please? Agreed, thank you. Okay, item 7 is any urgent business. I don't think we have any urgent business, so can I thank everybody for their attendance today, and that is the end of the meeting. Thank you.